Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're zeroing in on a really significant development in the green energy space.
Yeah, we're looking at India's move to formalize green hydrogen.
Exactly. A brand new certification scheme, plus linking it up with carbon credit rules.
And this isn't just, a minor tweak. It feels quite foundational.
For sure, it could genuinely reshape energy markets, maybe accelerate that shift to cleaner fuels we're all watching. So if you're looking to get up to speed quickly on this, understand the basics and the implications, well, you're in the right place.
Definitely. Our main source today is a detailed report from the Indian Express, and our aim isn't just to list the
No,
facts.
we want to really dig in, right?
Right. Dissect the core parts, the certification, how it meshes with carbon credits, and try to figure out what it means for India's energy path and its role as potentially a major global supplier of this stuff.
Okay, so let's get straight into it then. This certification scheme, announced by the minister, Pralhad Joshi, end of April, it feels like the starting block. What's it actually designed to do?
Well, what's really notable is how comprehensive it aims to be. It's not just about printing a certificate.
Right.
It sets up a whole rigorous process. You've got measurement, monitoring, reporting, crucially, on-site verification.
Ah, okay. Boots on the ground?
Exactly. And then the certification of the green hydrogen produced in India. And this whole structure, it builds on a standard the ministry actually published back in 2023.
Okay, so they laid the groundwork last year. That makes sense.
Yeah, it provides that essential benchmark for what even counts as green.
And what does count? What's the threshold they've set emissions-wise?
So the standard is pretty clear and quite strict, actually. It caps emissions at 2 kilograms of CO2 equivalent for every single kilogram of hydrogen produced,
2 kilos.
which is, a key marker. It's meant to clearly separate the truly green stuff made using renewables for electrolysis or maybe biomass conversion
Right.
from other hydrogen production methods that, well, still carry a significant carbon footprint.
So fundamentally, this sounds like it's about building trust, preventing what the minister called greenwashing,
Precisely.
which seems vital if India seriously wants to export this stuff globally. You need that credibility.
Absolutely non-negotiable, I'd say. For India to hit those export ambitions, the integrity, the greenness of its hydrogen has to be beyond doubt. And they've put the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, the BE,
Yeah.
in charge as the nodal agency for the whole scheme. That central oversight is really key for consistent standards and, maintaining that credibility.
And it looks like those export ambitions aren't just talk. The article mentions a pretty big deal already inked with Japan.
Yes, and that really highlights the kind of scale they're aiming for. India's apparently signed an agreement to supply over 400,000 tons of green hydrogen derivatives.
Derivatives like green ammonia, I suppose.
Green ammonia is a key one, yeah. Because you can convert the hydrogen into ammonia, makes it much easier to ship and store long distances.
All right, logistics matter.
Hugely. And the initial terms for this deal were actually signed back in August last year. This new certification just adds that crucial layer of assurance for Japan and, well, any future international customers.
Okay, let's pivot slightly then to the other big piece, the carbon credit trading scheme, or CCTS. How does this connect with green hydrogen? It sounds like this is where the incentives start to come in.
That's exactly right. The BEE, alongside the certification, announced an offset mechanism within the CCTS.
An offset mechanism, okay.
Yeah, specifically to nudge those hard-to-abate sectors, think heavy industry, towards using green hydrogen if they make the switch.
They can earn carbon credits.
Exactly. Burn them, trade them. It makes adopting green hydrogen potentially more financially viable for industries that find it really tough to decarbonize otherwise.
Which industries are we talking about initially? The article mentions some that are already part of the CCTS targets.
Yeah, so currently the mandatory CCTS targets, they apply to sectors like aluminum, chlor-alkali, pulp and paper, cement.
Okay. Maybe not the biggest immediate hydrogen users.
Potentially not huge users right now, no. But these new guidelines, they're clearly looking ahead. They provide a compliance roadmap for industries like steel and shipping.
Ah, the big emitters.
The really big ones, yeah. Anticipating that the CCTS will eventually expand to include them more directly.
Okay, just so I'm absolutely clear on this and for everyone listening, the green hydrogen certificate itself doesn't magically create carbon credits, does it?
No, that's a really important distinction.
It just verifies the hydrogen is actually green.
Correct. It confirms the environmental credentials. Then, separately, and the BEE released this methodology on April 27th, there's a specific way to calculate the carbon offsets you achieve.
Right.
When green hydrogen, made via electrolysis, replaces fossil fuels in one of those eligible sectors. That methodology defines how you quantify the emissions saved, and that saving can then potentially become a tradable carbon credit under the CCTS.
I see. So it's a two-step process.
Yeah,
Prove it's green, then prove you used it to cut emissions in an eligible way.
you've got it.
It seems like quite a smart way to stimulate demand in those really energy-hungry parts of the economy. But there's always a but, isn't there? The article flags the cost. Green hydrogen is still expensive to make.
That is the elephant in the room, yes. It's a fundamental challenge. Even the Parliament's Standing Committee on Energy pointed this out back in March.
They flag the high production costs.
They did. And they recommended focusing green hydrogen hubs in places that tick multiple boxes, loads of renewable energy potential, access to water, and crucially, close to the industries that will actually use the hydrogen. It's all about economic viability.
Which ties into the government identifying those specific coastal areas, Kandla, Paradip, Tuticorin with ports, ready for export presumably.
Makes sense. Location is key for costs.
And Minister Joshi apparently made a comparison to solar power, how its costs plummeted. Is that realistic for hydrogen?
Well, it's certainly the optimistic view. He pointed to, scale, skills, speed, the things that drove down solar costs.
Scale, skill, and speed.
The hope is definitely that green hydrogen follows a similar path as the industry grows, technology improves, deployment ramps up.
But it's not guaranteed, is it?
Not at all. The challenges are different. Electrolyzer costs are still high. You need massive renewable energy build-out, grid infrastructure, transport logistics. It might be a steeper initial curve than solar.
Okay, yeah. Different beast. Another critical point raised is water. Electrolysis needs a lot of water, right? How does this new framework handle that?
Yes, that's absolutely vital for sustainability. The estimates are around 10 liters of treated water for every kilogram of green hydrogen produced via electrolysis.
10 liters per kilo. That adds up.
It certainly does. So, recognizing this, the CCTS guidelines actually set some pretty strict rules on water use. A project can't use more than 5% of the locally available drinking water supply.
Only 5% of drinking water. That seems like a sensible safeguard.
It's crucial, yeah, to avoid impacting local communities or stressing water resources.
So if they can't rely heavily on local fresh water, what's the plan? Where does the water come from?
The strong push is towards sustainable sources. The guidelines specifically mention using desalinated seawater or treated wastewater.
Ah, okay. Does that add a lot to the cost?
Apparently, assessments suggest the impact on the final hydrogen cost is relatively marginal. And looking longer term, the National Green Hydrogen Mission.
Right, the big government program.
Yeah, backed by almost Earth's 20,000 crore, so serious money. That mission will specifically support R&D into tech that can use seawater or wastewater directly in electrolysis.
Without needing extensive pretreatment.
That's the goal, to cut down treatment needs and overall water demand even further.
It really is fascinating seeing how they're trying to weave all these threads together. The certification, the carbon credits, the funding for manufacturing and R&D through the national mission. What's your take on the significance of this whole integrated package?
Well, stepping back and looking at the global picture, this integrated approach, it really signals India's serious commitment to becoming a major force in the green hydrogen economy that's starting to emerge.
Building credibility from the start.
Exactly. The strict certification builds that essential trust for exports. Linking it to carbon credits creates that vital domestic demand pull, especially in those heavy industries needing decarbonization options.
And the government funding helps de-risk it and push down costs.
Precisely. The National Green Hydrogen Mission's investment is critical for tackling those cost hurdles and getting the scale needed to be competitive internationally. It positions India quite strategically, actually.
How so?
Well, as the world shifts from fossil fuels, a country that can reliably produce and export large volumes of certified green hydrogen could potentially leapfrog some traditional energy players. That certification, if it's robustly enforced, could be a real competitive advantage.
And that focus on handling the water issue sustainably from the get-go also seems important. Shows they're thinking about the long-term environmental footprint.
Absolutely essential. Tackling water through both rules and R&D support is key for the whole enterprise to be genuinely sustainable and maintain public acceptance. Overall, this framework really could reshape India's industrial landscape and significantly help meet its climate targets by offering a cleaner fuel alternative.
Okay, so wrapping it up. India's essentially put down a marker, a formal certified pathway for green hydrogen tied directly into its carbon market, aiming to drive both exports and domestic use in key sectors. And they're doing this under a big national mission that's also trying to tackle the tricky issues of cost and water use right from the start.
That sums up the core elements quite nicely, yes.
It's a really crucial development to understand in this rapidly evolving energy transition. So a final thought for you, the listener. Considering the sheer ambition here in India and the global push for decarbonization, what other innovations, maybe technological leaps or even different policy tools, might emerge to accelerate this green hydrogen revolution even faster? And perhaps what role could you see yourself playing, even just in understanding this massive shift that's underway?